Yeah.
We're good.
Focus on public leadership and leadership in a crisis. Please discuss ways that you believe organizations can prepare leaders at all levels to respond in a crisis. Consider in this discussion the communication issues faced by BP and the spill and the failures of crisis communication.
So I was looking at the text, and I think there's a box 13.2, where it talks about like all of the different qualities right after they studied several different crises in different organizations. And there's so many, from pre-crisis to when the crisis event is actually happening to post-crisis. But the ones that I found the most interesting, which I relate to, is the first one was issue selling. And it's really, middle management explaining to top level executives, like, we really need to pay attention to this. Like, this could be something that impacts us in the future. Has a software that we use with our smaller clients, and we're getting ready to move it to our bigger clients, but it's not perfect. And the manual processes are, pretty intense. So alerting the CEOs in the upper levels and saying, hey, we're not ready yet. We need to fix these things. And then creativity, just figuring out ways to identify crises before they happen or to manage them while they're happening.
I think relating to that specific story that was given in the book, I feel like my first question was, how did this guy become a CEO if this is how he handles such a tragedy within the company, right? And then part of it was he was lying about what was actually happening. So he was claiming that 1,000 to 5,000 barrels of oil were released daily, but really there was up to 62,000 barrels done daily. So it's like, okay, well, you got to be upfront and honest during any crisis. And it said in the reading that you should be upfront and honest, because in the end, the truth always comes out anyway. And then another thing was he made the comments about, I just want my life back. Like, you can't say that when you're the head of a corporation defending what is happening. And then lastly, how he just went on that yacht race instead of putting like the priorities in order and getting done what needed to be done. He was just focused on self rather than fixing what was already happening. So I think I kind of learned from that, like, you have to have leaders in place who can be quick to make decisions, who can be truthful, and who can handle their composure in front of the audience.
And just to piggyback off you really quick, they also had like safety violations that, like a couple months prior. Like, so if they went back and fixed what was wrong, this totally could have been like, what's the word I'm thinking of? Like, avoidable. It's just crazy to think
Like,
of.
avoided?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is crazy that it comes down to, like, basically it was like miscommunication and like bad management that caused like such an awful thing to happen. And I like what you were saying about how like middle management being the ones to say, like, listen, like, maybe the upper people don't know what's going on within a company as well as the people who are actually like working the day-to-day things, where like them having the courage to say, like, all right, listen, we think this is what we need to do because we're the ones who are like the most involved. And I think I've seen that in one of my friends who the company she works for is like that, where people who are working like the core group who are not like the head like management, but they know how things run better than like even the executive teams do. So I think with the crisis stuff, being able to step up and say, this is what I think we should do, but also having people around making those decisions, because I feel like when you're making decisions in a crisis, can be like rash decisions, or it could be like you're not sure if it's the right call, but someone has to make the call. So I think having people around you too who are encouraging you, either like mentors, like they mentioned in the book, or just your other coworkers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and so just to add to that BP spill, I mean, I think that was just a good example of what not to do. He literally did everything wrong. He said all the wrong things. He did all the wrong things. And it said in the book that he spent 28 years in the oil business. He had a doctorate in geology, and he was an experienced exploration manager. So, I mean, he was very qualified to be a CEO, but he just had no leadership abilities. And that's something that it backfired on them. The whole company took a hit for that. And then just to talk about, I guess, how organizations can prepare leaders to be better in a crisis. There was the 3 steps to the crisis leadership. And I think when you deal with that, you're really focusing on the abnormal accidents. And the book described that as something that people don't really expect to happen, like school shootings or terrorism acts, certain things like that. And just from my own experience at my city, I'm from Gilroy, California, and we have the Garlic Festival here. And in June or July, we had the Garlic Festival shooting, and a few people were killed there.
Oh my
And
goodness.
yeah, and they weren't prepared for it at all. Security was very bad. Pretty much anyone could get in with anything in their bag. And so the pre-crisis stage, which is the first stage, they really didn't do a good job because none of them were prepared for that to happen. You have armed officers to take care of the whole situation, but I mean, it took a while. And the fact that he was able to get in with the gun was kind of disturbing.
Mm.
And so the second stage to that is the crisis event. So once things are actually happening, the ones that really took control of it were the bystanders, off-duty cops. They really stepped in. The security at the festival didn't really do a good job of it. And so the post-crisis, which is the third step, I think for the most part, it took the city or my city to get back to normal because we're kind of a small city, and for something like that to happen, it really takes a toll on everyone. But I think for the most part that they did a good job of rallying together and having like vigils and city gatherings to kind of make sure everyone was on the same page. Heavy stuff, I know. Sorry.
So sad.
Man, crazy. That's a really good example of
Yeah, it's
having
relevant.
to come together in a crisis and have to. Some people have to step up to say, "All right, guys, this is what we got to do to like keep everyone else safe."
Yeah.
Because it's like I feel like the fight or flight thing
Oh,
of
yeah.
like, frozen of like I don't know what to do, and then like the bystanders who stepped up and
Definitely.
that's crazy.
I related the reading to the mishap that we had with Starbucks, what happened in Philadelphia. And I just related that to the leaders with Starbucks. They flew out to Philadelphia, personally apologized. They had one spokesperson who talked to all the partners and the public. So it was kind of doing everything like what the book was saying. So I was just kind of relating it to that. And then to help like prevent, I thought having the strong plans in place from the beginning, making sure that leaders have the proper training, and then even like role-playing issues. Like there's no way to be fully prepared, but I think little things like that could help when a situation arises.
And when those situations do arise, I think it is so important for those leaders to have all the information, like, because obviously, especially for the Starbucks thing, millions of sources were there, all kinds of news companies. Like, if they didn't know the whole story, no one would have taken them seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah, and going back to the BP part too, that I forgot to mention, you had said how the guy said he disregarding the people who had lost their lives, and part of that in the crisis leadership competencies is perspective taking and tending to the needs of all the people that are impacted. And like you said, the Starbucks leaders rushed there and they took ownership of, addressing the issue, whereas the CEO did not. and he kind of disregarded his expertise and was just like, yeah, I'm not what did he say, a geological engineer or something. So it's definitely important that the leaders are there to say, hey, I own this, we're going to make it better, we're going to figure this out. Their communication was all bad.
Agree.
So we started at about 8:01, so we have about 2 minutes left.
Let's see.
There was something that I read. It said about how in the midst of an emergency, resist the temptation to reach decisions quickly and seek out new information, and to not just try to like pull things and like try to a conclusion, but to like actually have the facts of like this is what happened, so that that information can be relayed properly. Because I feel like that's get out of hand when there's so many different stories and so many different like, oh, this is what happened at that Starbucks, and then no one knows what the true story was.
Right.
So I think like important for the leaders to like say, okay, this is what happened, we know this happened, we're taking ownership for it, and not trying to skew it at all. So I feel like
and
that
it also mentioned like having one spokesperson rather than multiple people talking from the same organization, because different opinions, different views, different like stating different things. When if you just have one person, there's only one thing that's going out, instead of all the mixed reviews.
which is easy to happen, I feel like, now with social media and everything is always at the touch of a finger.
Okay, I do have to ask. Okay, so I just hit the stop recording, and does anyone, I don't know if Anthony ever talked about it, does it just automatically pop up as an MP4 file, or?
Yeah, I think it's supposed to.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to do it while everyone's still on here, just so it's not my fault if anything happens.
Just start recording again.
I know.